Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello, everybody. I am Mohammed Ghaly. I'm the moderator, I'm a professor of Islamic bioethics and the chair of the Congress, and I am the moderator of this session. I have three prominent colleagues with me. We will together be discussing key concepts which are central in both the Islamic tradition and Islamic moral thought on one hand, and they have implications on the bioethical perspectives when we speak about developing bioethical perspectives in the Islamic tradition. So we will study how these concepts like marriage, like family, relationship between man and woman, etc., and how they relate to the field of so-called Islamic bioethics. As I said, I have three speakers. I will start with a short introduction. Then we will have the three talks from the colleagues, and then we will have the discussion. Briefly, preparing for or paving the way for my colleagues. By the way, two speakers will speak in Arabic and two will be in English. So those who are not bilingual, please try to get your phones for translation. So if you know only English, it will be an issue. If you know only Arabic, it will be an issue. But there is translation to both languages. So to start with, one of the famous questions usually raised in a context like the Congress we have now, when we speak about global bioethics, usually also from journalists and so on, what makes Islamic bioethics Islamic and how different it is from mainstream or secular bioethics and so on. And what makes any religious bioethics different? So we can briefly say something about this because it will directly relate to the discussions we have. When we speak about Islamic bioethics and to a certain extent religious bioethics in general, it starts with a relationship between man in the capacity of a creature, makhluq, a servant, abd, and God in the capacity of the creator, khaliq, and lawgiver, shari'a, legislator. So there is a scope for human agency and there is a scope for divine agency. They are not the same, they are not equal, and the lines between the two should be clearly delineated when we discuss and act and judge it as an ethical or unethical, right and wrong. This is one. So when we speak, applying this to bioethics, when we speak about consent, informed consent, autonomy, and so on, we do not have only the physician and the patient, but we also have God. So if the patient's consent is necessary, the lawgiver's permission is also necessary. إذن الشارع, as we say. Otherwise, the whole act will not be ethical. This is one. Two, the human nature. From an Islamic perspective, and again, other religions may also agree with that, the nature of being humanness is not only a body, for which we usually provide care through medicine, biomedical sciences, research, and so on, but there is also a soul. And this soul, this human soul, when it is breathed into the embryo, according to the mainstream perspective in Islam, after 120 days of pregnancy, before the moral standing of the embryo is something, and after the moral standing of the embryo is something else. Not necessarily because something substantial happened on the eve of 120 days, but because something metaphysical happened, which is the breathing of the soul or nafkh al-ruh. This would have applications to stem cell research, embryo research, all the genetic testing. All these things relate to not only seeing a body and genes and DNA, but seeing also the soul in it. The third thing, which is the main focus of our panel today, is the relationship, man-man relationship. Muamalat, as we say it in the fiqh, in Islamic jurisprudence. How a human being relates to the other is something where God has something to say. It's not only a matter of mutual agreement, when we agree on something that everything would be possible. So when we have a man and a woman and they agree together to have a child, this is not enough. This is not enough to make this relationship ethical and acceptable from a religious perspective, but there are other demands that God says that this man and woman can relate to each other only through a religiously valid marital contract. So there must be a marriage, and through the marriage you can set up a family. And once this marriage is established, there are a mutual set of rights and obligations and so on, and both stakeholders, the man and the woman, they become automatically held accountable, not necessarily before the judge or only before the state, but before God, also in the hereafter. Again, these things will have implications. This will be the focus of the whole discussion today. So this is my brief introduction. Now I will give the floor to my colleagues. We will start with Dr. Dr. Abdurrahman Helli. Dr. Abdurrahman Helli is Associate Professor of Quranic Studies in the College of Sharia at Qatar University. We will start with him, and he will discuss the issues that I have now outlined from a scriptural, ethical perspective, especially depending on the Quranic narrative. He will speak in Arabic, Dr. Abdurrahman. So please, colleagues who need translation, please pick up your earphone translation set so that you can follow what my colleague is saying. So Abdurrahman, the floor is yours, and you have 15 minutes. Is this fine? 15 minutes? You want more? We can give you 20 and we give Dr. Mutaz 10. No problem. Okay, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. شكرا لحضوركم، شكرا دكتور محمد على هذا التقديم. ما سأتحدث عنه في هذه العجالة هو الحديث عن الأسرة في القرآن الكريم، المنظومة والقيم، باعتبار أن كل شيء يتعلق بمنظومة الأسرة مبني على الرؤية القرآنية التي تؤسس أو التي بنيت عليها المنظومة الفقهية في التراث الإسلامي. وعندما نتحدث عن أي موضوع في القرآن الكريم فإن أول ما ينبغي أن نلاحظه، لا سيما عندما يكون الموضوع متعلقاً بالشأن الاجتماعي، هو معرفة الحالة التي كانت قبل نزول القرآن الكريم والتحول الذي أحدثه القرآن الكريم في هذا الموضوع أو ذاك. وهذا شرط ليس خاص في الأحكام، حتى في اللغة وأمور أخرى، لكنه أشد أهمية عندما نتحدث عن مسألة الأحكام. لذلك أول ما سأبدأ به في الجزء الأول من مداخلتي هو الحديث عن الأسرة أو الزواج قبل الإسلام والأنواع والقيم التي كانت سائدة في ذلك الحين. كما ترون في هذا التمثيل المصور لحالات الزواج أو الأسرة قبل الإسلام، العنصر الأساسي الذي كان هو الزواج المألوف حالياً والذي استمر إلى عبر الأزمان عند كل الحضارات. لكن قبل الإسلام كانت هناك أنواع متعددة من الزواج، منها ما عرفناها من القرآن الكريم ومنها ما عرفناها من مصادر أخرى كالسنة وغيرها. في الجزء الأيمن من الصور هي صورة الأسرة، صورة الأسرة التي هي تتكون من علاقة زوجية، فمنها ما يسمى زواج الاستبضاع، وهو الذي يهدف إلى تحسين النسل من طرف آخر، ثم ينسب المولود إلى الأب والزوج الأساسي. ومنها أيضا ما يسمى زواج الرهط، الذي كان الرجل أو المرأة تتزوج عدة رجال ثم لاحقا تنسب الولد إلى واحد من هؤلاء الأزواج. ومنها أيضا ما يسمى وراثة النكاح، وهو وراثة الأرملة الأب عندما يتوفى. هذه الأنواع الثلاثة كانت موجودة. هناك أنواع أخرى من العلاقة بين الذكر والأنثى والتي هدفها المتعة، ومعروف الزنا وهو علاقة علنية بين رجل وامرأة. وهناك أيضا البغاء، هو علاقة لكن ترتبط بالمال. وهناك اتخاذ الخدن وهو الزنا بالسر. وهناك أيضا ما يسمى أو يعرف زواج المتعة، والذي هو مقابل مال وزمن مؤقت في العلاقة. الخلاصة التي أريد أن أصل إليها من هذه الهيكلية التي كانت سائدة قبل الإسلام أن هناك مجموعة من العناصر الثابتة في هذه العلاقة الزوجية. أول شيء كانت العلاقة بين ذكر وأنثى هي نواة الأسرة، لم يكن هناك خيار آخر في العلاقات الأسرية قبل الإسلام. في كل هذه الأنواع التي عرضتها، وهناك أشياء أخرى لكن أقل معرفة وشهرة، كان تثبيت النسب أساسي، سواء كان من زواج شرعي أو من علاقة غير شرعية. فكان هناك وعي جماعي لدى العرب أن أي مولود من أي علاقة ينبغي تثبيت نسبه. أيضا كان هناك قيمة مشهورة عندهم هي تكسير النسل، وهناك دوافع اجتماعية منها الحروب وما يتعلق بها، وهذا انعكس سلبا على الموقف من الفتاة أو البنت التي تولد، وحرم الإسلام كثيرا من الأشياء التي كانت سائدة في هذا الأمر كما سأشير. بالنسبة للعلاقات التي تبنى على العلاقة الزوجية، كان هناك محرمات في كل هذه العلاقات الزوجية، بما فيها المحرمات المبنية على التبني، حيث كان التبني مشروعا، وكانت الحرمة بالتبني كالحرمة من الابن الطبيعي البيولوجي الذي يولد من نفس الأسرة. وكان هناك أيضا تقاليد للفراق وفسخ العلاقة الزوجية، وكان في هذه التقاليد نوع من التعسف في حق المرأة والعلاقة مع النساء. إذن هذه أهم الأشياء الأساسية. مما يلفت النظر أن رغم أن الرضاعة كان موجودا عند العرب، لكن لم يكن هناك تحريم على أساس الرضاعة. الآن ما الذي أحدثه الإسلام من تحول في هذه العلاقة بين الزوجين وفي إنشاء الأسرة؟ هناك آيات قرآنية مفتاحية في فهم هذا الموضوع. من أهمها الآية الأولى من سورة النساء: يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. وآية أخرى من أواخر سورة الحجرات: يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. هاتان الآيتان مركزيتان أو مفتاحيتان في فهم موضوع الأسرة. أهم ما يبنى عليهما أن الأسرة تبنى من ذكر وأنثى، هذه قضية ثابتة في بناء هيكل الأسرة. ويبنى على هذه العلاقة بين الذكر والأنثى كما يفهم من هاتين الآيتين عدة أمور. الأمر الأول التأكيد على النسل والحفاظ عليه، والنسل كما هو معروف على خلاف في تفصيله أنه أحد مقاصد الشريعة الخمس، على اختلاف في تعريفه والكلام عنه. فنجد مثلا في هذه الآية الحديث عن بث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء من الذكر والأنثى. أيضا الحديث عن النسل والتوالد، وأن هذه العلاقة الزوجية محصورة من حيث يحصل النسل، نساؤكم حرث لكم، فحصرت العلاقة الزوجية في مكان التوالد من المرأة. وأيضا مما تشير إليه آيات أخرى ذم إهلاك الحرث والنسل، وهو ما يسمى اليوم إهلاك البيئة، الفساد في البيئة، وقرن به إفساد النسل، إفساد استمرار السلالة البشرية على طبيعتها التي أنشئت عليها. القيمة الثانية التي تؤكد عليها هذه الآيات التأكيد على النسب والمصاهرة وقرابة الأرحام الناتجة عن الزواج بين رجل وامرأة، وقرابة الرضاع أيضا. فعندما هنا نتحدث عن النسب والذي من الله به على البشر في آيات كثيرة، أضاف إليه الأرحام، النسب والعلاقة العمودية التي تنشأ باتجاه الآباء والأبناء والعلاقة من قبل الآباء. الأرحام هي العلاقة من طرف الأم، وأكد عليها القرآن تأكيدا خاصا. أضاف إليها حرمة التبني الذي كان شائعا في الجاهلية، وعندما نتحدث عن التبني فإنما نتحدث عن أن هذا التبني لا يبنى عليه نسب. الشيء الفارق بين ما أحدثه الإسلام من موقف وأحكام تجاه النسب وما كان في الجاهلية، أن القيمة الكبرى للنسب في الجاهلية هي الاعتراف، سواء كان هذا الولد عضويا أم غير عضوي، حتى قد يكون الولد عضويا وينفيه الأب. لكن هذا في القرآن الكريم وفي التشريع الإسلامي جعلت العلاقة العضوية أساسية، على خلاف عند بعض الفقهاء ربما يشار إليه لاحقا فيما يتعلق بشرط العقد أو عدمه. لكن هنا عندما نفي النسب عن التبني الذي واسطته التبني، هو تأكيد على أن هذا الولد الذي من التبني ليس ولدا حقيقيا. أيضا أضيف إليه علاقة أو الحرمة بالرضاع، والذي لم يكن في الجاهلية. وإذا أردنا أن نأخذ خلاصة من هذه العلاقات التي أكدت عليها الآيات والتي أشارت إليها آيات الحجرات، هو التأكيد على الاتساع والتنوع والتزاوج العابر للقبائل والأسر والأعراق، جعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. فقضية الانتشار والتواصل والتعارف مقصد أساسي واضح في هذه الآية. إذا انتقلنا إلى القيم الحاكمة للعلاقة الزوجية، أهم شيء بدأت به العلاقة الزوجية في التشريع القرآني هو هدم ما كان في الجاهلية، وهو التعبير الذي عبرت عنه السيدة عائشة رضي الله عنها: فلما بعث محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم بالحق هدم نكاح الجاهلية، الذي أشرت إليه أنواعه الكثيرة كله إلا نكاح الناس اليوم، وهو النكاح المعروف في علاقة بين زوج وزوجة، ويبنى عليهما ما سيشار إليه من منظومة أسرية. لذلك حرم الزنا، حرم البغاء، حرم اتخاذ الخدن، حرم تعدد الأزواج، وحرم نكاح زوجة الأب أيضا، وحرم الزواج المؤقت بعوض. أيضا تم تقييد الزواج الطبيعي بزوجة واحدة أو ب4 ضمن شروط وحالات مضبوطة. أيضا تم تقييد الطلاق الذي كان مفتوحا في الجاهلية، يطلق ثم يراجع الزوجة ثم يطلق ثم يراجع مضارة بها، تم تحريم ذلك أيضا وتقييده ب2 فقط. كما تم تقييد كل علاقات ضارة بالمرأة وحرمانها من حق المتعة كالإيلاء والظهار ونحوه. أما القيم التي تنظم هذه العلاقة الأسرية التي أشرت إليها، فعندنا عدة قيم حاكمة لهذه العلاقة الزوجية كما نفهمها من القرآن الكريم. أول شيء قيم العلاقة الأسرية القائمة التي في أعلاها ما صرحت به الآية من السكن والمودة والرحمة، ثم المعاشرة بالمعروف، ثم في أدنى الحالات الإمساك بالمعروف. أي أدنى الحالة أن يكون استمرار العلاقة بالمعروف. فإذا لم تستمر هذه الأسرة فالقيمة الأكبر هي التسريح بإحسان من غير إضرار. فكلمة التسريح بإحسان أعلى من قيمة المعروف، الإحسان مرتبة أعلى من المعروف، فهي تأكيد على أن العلاقة الأسرية سواء كانت قائمة أو انتهت ينبغي أن تبقى في سلم الاحترام والأخلاق، وهو ما أكدت عليه آيات أخرى بالتذكير بقيمة العلاقة الزوجية التي حصل فيها الإفضاء بين الزوجين ماديا ونفسيا. الشيء الآخر الذي تشير إليه آيات أخرى فيما يتعلق بالعلاقة الزوجية هو أن هذه العلاقة الزوجية هي علاقة تعاقدية، لكنها علاقة تعاقدية من نوع خاص، لذلك سميت الميثاق الغليظ. والميثاق الغليظ أمر لم يوصف به إلا العهد الإلهي مع الأنبياء وأتباعهم، فسميت العلاقة الزوجية بميثاق غليظ لخصوصية هذه العلاقة وأهميتها. أيضا عندما يتم الزواج هناك رابط مادي حتى هو ركن من أركان الزواج وهو ما يعرف بالمهر، لكن القرآن الكريم سماه صداقا ووصفه بأنه نحلة، مما يعني أن هذا الصداقة ليس عوضا كما جرى عليه كثير من الفقهاء من تفسيرات لمعنى هذا العوض، لأن ما فسر على أنه عوض هو حق متبادل سواء وجد الصداق بقيمة ما أو لم يوجد. حتى بعض الفقهاء اعتبر الصداق أمرا رمزيا، يعني ليس عوضا له بدل. أيضا عندنا مما يترتب على حق من حقوق زوجية حق الاستمتاع المتبادل، لذلك حرم الإيلاء أو وضع له حلول، حرم الظهار أو وضع له حلول، وكذلك قيد الطلاق بمرتين بحيث لا يحصل فيه الضرر. بل حق البنات أن لا يعضلن، إذا تعسف الرجل بمنع الفتاة من الزواج أيضا جرى تحريم عضل البنات. أخيرا مما تنص عليه الآيات واجب النفقة الذي ارتبط بمفهوم القوامة في القرآن الكريم، وهو واجب على الزوج لأنه شرط أساسي لقيام الحياة الزوجية المادية. والتفاصيل في هذا كثيرة جدا، لكن ما أردت أن ألخصه هنا أن هناك تحولا جذريا حصل بين ما كان في الجاهلية وما شرعه القرآن الكريم، وهذا التحول هو العنصر الأساسي الحاكم للمنظومة الفقهية عبر التاريخ، والتي لا تزال آثارها قائمة إلى اليوم في الفقه الإسلامي المعاصر. بنية الأسرة هي لم تتغير، القيم الحاكمة فيها نفسها. هناك تفاصيل اختلفت بين فقيه وآخر في فهم بعض القضايا، لعل المداخلات الأخرى ستكملها أو تفصل فيها. أشكر استماعكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdurrahman Helli. Now, Dr. Mutaz Al-Khatib, Associate Professor of Islamic Ethics and Moral Philosophy in our Research Center of Islamic Legislation and Ethics at Hamad bin Khalifa University. The floor is yours, and you also have 15 minutes.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سأتحدث إليكم بالعربية اليوم حول الزواج ونظام العائلة في الفقه الإسلامي، التداخل بين الأخلاقي والديني والقانوني. فيما يخص الزواج في الفقه الإسلامي، منظومة الفقه الإسلامي، طبعا لدينا عدة مذاهب لمن لا يعرف، ليس لديه خلفية حول المذاهب الفقهية. لدينا عدة مذاهب، ولكن المذاهب السنية المشهورة هي 4، المذهب الفقهي والحنفي والشافعي والمالكي، والحنفي والشافعي والمالكي والحنفي. فيما يخص الزواج تحديدا، موضوع الزواج يسمى باللغة القرآنية والفقهية النكاح. دائما هناك كتاب أو تشابتر، فصل خاص حول الزواج في كل كتاب من كتب دواوين السنة النبوية، كتب الحديث، المصادر الرئيسية للحديث النبوي، وكتب الفقه أيضا. أي كتاب في الفقه إذا فتحتم هذا الكتاب ستجدون كتابا خاصا أو تشابتر حول كتاب النكاح. كذلك في مدونات الحديث النبوي تاريخيا، وهذا أمر عام في كل الكتب. فإذا يعطي مركزية، يوضح موقع الزواج من التصور الإسلامي، وتحديدا من تصورات الفقه الإسلامي عامة. الزواج تحديدا، سأستعمل الزواج بدل النكاح في هذا الحديث، هو عقد مركب من 3 أمور، يجمع 3 أبعاد رئيسية: القانوني والأخلاقي والديني. الديني هنا ماذا أقصد بالديني؟ هنا أقصد بالديني ما قصد فيه معنى القربة، التعبد أو العبادة، وهذه مسألة من أمور الآخرة ليست من أمور الدنيا. والأخلاقي، أقصد بالأخلاقي هنا الاتساق الداخلي بين الضمير الفردي وبين السلوك الفردي. و الأخلاقي، هذا الاتساق سيولد فكرة الصدق مع النفس وتحمل المسؤولية الأخلاقية أيضا. فيما يخص القانوني، ماذا أقصد بالقانوني؟ قبل أن أشرح التصور الإسلامي حول التصور الفقهي تحديدا حول الزواج، ماذا أقصد بالقانوني؟ أقصد به القوانين والتشريعات التي تنظمها الدولة لأجل القضاء في الأمور التي تخضع للتقاضي، أي التي يمكن التنازع فيها بين الطرفين واللجوء إلى القضاء. فإذا هكذا شرحت ماذا أقصد بهذه المفردات أو الاصطلاحات: الديني والأخلاقي والقانوني. فما أقوله هنا إن الزواج هو عقد مركب بين هذه الأبعاد ال3 بالمعاني التي شرحتها. الآن لننتقل إلى قاعدة رئيسية أو قبل أن أنتقل إلى هذه القاعدة لابد أن أوضح أن الفقهاء، المذاهب الفقهية التي أشرت إليها قبل قليل، وهي المذاهب الفقهية التي أشرت إليها قبل قليل والتي تشكلت في القرن الرابع الهجري، ولكن مؤسسي هذه المذاهب ينتمون إلى القرن الثاني الهجري والثالث، القرنين الثاني والثالث الهجريين. هذه المذاهب الفقهية اختلفت حول أمرين رئيسين في موضوع الزواج. الأمر الأول هو حول موضوع العقد الذي يتم التعاقد عليه فيما يخص الزواج. يعني الزواج هو عقد، لكن هذا العقد ما موضوعه؟ على ماذا يتم التعاقد؟ هناك خلافات بين الفقهاء. أيضا اختلفوا حول تحديد الآثار التي تنبني على هذا العقد. عقد الزواج ينبني عليه آثار كثيرة. طيب، اختلفوا في تفاصيل هذه الآثار التي تبنى على العقد، ولكنهم اتفقوا جميعا على المقاصد التي يتوخى تحقيقها من خلال هذا العقد. سأتي إليها لاحقا. إذن أنتقل من هذا المدخل العام إلى الحديث عن القاعدة الأساسية في الإسلام حول الزواج، والتي توافق عليها جميع الفقهاء وجميع علماء الإسلام عامة. القاعدة الأولى وهي من جزئين. الجزء الأول هو أن الزواج لا يكون إلا بين ذكر وأنثى، كما قال كما أوضح الدكتور عبد الرحمن قبل قليل. فإذا أيضا العلاقة بين ذكر وأنثى بوجود عقد، ليست فقط مجرد العلاقة، فلا بد من وجود العقد الذي له صفات خاصة حتى يعتبر عقدا شرعيا. المسألة الثانية، الجزئية الثانية من هذه القاعدة الكبرى التي يقوم عليها موضوع الزواج في الإسلام، هي أن الزواج شرط لبناء العائلة. فإذا لا عائلة من دون عقد زواج، وهذا ينبني عليه آثار عملية عديدة سأشير إلى بعضها لاحقا. ولكن هذه القاعدة بجزئيها، أن الزواج علاقة بين الذكر وأنثى بوجود عقد، وأنه لا يمكن إنشاء عائلة من دون زواج بعقد، هذه توضح أسباب الجدل التي تثور في العقود الأخيرة ربما حول الزواج حول رفض المسلمين للزواج بين متحدي الجنس، وحول إنشاء عائلة من خارج من خارج إطار الزواج، سواء كانت هذه العلاقة بالوسائل التقليدية، الزواج التقليدي، أو بوسائل تقنية حديثة. ولتوضيح هذا التداخل الذي أشرت إليه بين القانوني والديني والأخلاقي، لابد سأقدم أطروحة هنا أعيد فيها صياغة هذه الثلاثية، القانوني والأخلاقي والديني، بثلاث مفردات أو ثلاث اصطلاحات. الأول العبادة، والثاني الصيغة، والثالث القيمة. العبادة worship، الصيغة form، والقيمة value. فعقد الزواج يحقق، العقد الشرعي في الإسلام، العقد الزواج الشرعي في الإسلام يجب أن تتحقق فيه هذه الثلاثية، الصيغة والقيمة والعبادة. الآن فالعبادة تتمثل، سأشرح ماذا تعني كل واحدة من هذه المفردات في الجزء اللاحق. الآن فيما يخص العبادة، فمفهوم العبادة في الإسلام ينصرف إلى فعل الزواج نفسه، وإلى الثمار التي ينتجها هذا العقد، عقد الزواج، وإلى المقاصد التي يتوخى تحقيقها من هذا العقد. فيما يخص فعل الزواج نفسه، فيما يخص فعل الزواج نفسه، ففعل الزواج هو فعل متجاوز لإشباع الرغبة، إشباع الغريزة. لماذا؟ لأنه مثلا لو قصد فقط الزواج من أجل الرغبة لن يكون له أجر، فعله مباح ولكن ليس له أجر، ولكن لأنه اقتصر فقط على تحقيق الرغبة أو إشباع الشهوة. فهذا يوضح جانبا من فكرة العبادة التي أشير إليها في عقد الزواج. أيضا هو عبادة قصد بها طاعة الله، فإذا قصد بها طاعة الله بتحقيق مقاصد الشارع والامتثال لأوامره المرجوة من عقد الزواج، فهنا دخل في إطار آخر، إطار تعبدي وفيه قربة إلى الله. ولذلك ناقش الفقهاء قديما وتاريخيا، ناقشوا هل الزواج أفضل ولا أداء العبادات، التعبد، التفرغ لأداء النوافل، نوافل العبادات. فكثير من الفقهاء قالوا لا، أو جمهور الفقهاء يقول إذا قصد من الزواج تحقيق هذه المقاصد ففعله عبادة وأفضل من التفرغ للعبادة. أيضا فيما يخص ثمار العقد، فعقد الزواج يترتب عليه مصالح دنيوية ومصالح أخروية. يترتب عليه مصالح دنيوية مرتبطة بالنفقة على الزوجة والأولاد، وإنشاء تمتين العلاقات الاجتماعية إلى غير ذلك من المصالح الدنيوية التي لا مجال لتفصيلها الآن. ولكن فيما يخص المصالح الأخروية، مثلا لو تزوج بقصد إنجاب الولد الصالح، ففعله سيصبح عبادة بهذا المعنى، وسيدخل هذا المقصد في أمور الآخرة وليس في أمور الدنيا. فإذا هذا يوضح أيضا جانبا من جوانب كونه عبادة أو المعنى التعبدي في الزواج. فيما يخص المقاصد، مقاصد الزواج التي أيضا توضح جانبا من التعبد في الزواج، فإشباع الرغبة كما قلت على الشكل المشروع، فلا يكفي إشباع الرغبة أو تحقيق الشهوة، وإنما لا بد فيها من اتباع الشكل المشروع الذي يعصمه من العقوبة في الدنيا والعقوبة في الآخرة. فهذا النوع من اتباع الطريقة المشروعة فيه معنى التعبد والامتثال لأمر الشارع. أيضا طبعا علماء الشريعة يتحدثون عن أن المقصد الأعظم أو الأصلي بتعبير الإمام الشاطبي من الزواج هو حفظ النسل، وبالإضافة إلى تمتين الروابط الاجتماعية طبعا التي ستؤدي إلى مقصد خلافة الله في الأرض. هذا فيما يخص المعنى الأول وهو العبادة في الزواج. فيما يخص المعنى الثاني وهو الصيغة، والتي تحيل إلى الجانب القانوني، فتتمثل في الإطار القانوني والإجراءات المتبعة لتحقيق العقد بأركانه المختلفة وشروطه وشروط الواجبة فيه، وكل ما يشترط لإبرام هذا العقد ليصبح عقدا صالحا أو عقدا صحيحا. أما فيما يخص المعنى الثالث وهو القيمة، والتي تقوم مقام الأخلاق هنا، العبادة مقابل الديني، والصيغة مقابل القانوني، والقيمة مقابل الأخلاقي. فالقيمة هنا تتمثل في نوع العلاقة التي ينشئها الزواج. فإذا الزواج ليس مجرد إنشاء علاقة، وإن هناك نوع محدد من العلاقة هو الذي يراد إنشاؤه هنا على مستويين: مستوى الزوجين وعلى مستوى العائلة. فيما يخص مستوى الزوجين، فهو علاقة تقوم على تحقيق قيمة استباحة ما كان محرما في الأصل باتباع أوامر الشارع، أو باتباع الطريقة الذي أذن فيها الشارع، والشارع هنا هو الله سبحانه وتعالى. فهي طبعا الفقهاء يختلفون، المذاهب الفقهية تختلف حول توصيف هذه العلاقة: هل هي علاقة معاوضة أم هي علاقة مشاركة؟ جمهور الفقهاء طبعا يرى أنها علاقة معاوضة غير مالية، يعني هي عقد ميثاق، سمي ميثاقا غليظا، سمي الزواج ميثاقا غليظا لأنه يقع في أعلى العقود، يعني هو لا يشبه العقود المالية لأنه أرقى منها وأعلى منها، ولذلك غلظ، لأن فيه أبعاد معنوية وليست مادية فقط. الجانب المادي فيه محدود بالنظر إلى العقود المالية التي موضوعها مالي أصلا. فإذا إذا قلنا إنه علاقة معاوضة على مذهب جمهور الفقهاء، فالمسألة تحقق قيمة استباحة ما كان محرما باتباع إذن الشارع، أي على الطريقة التي أذن فيها الشارع، لأنه بخلاف ذلك سيكون فعله محرما. فإذا هو تحقق المباح بالطريقة التي أذن فيها الشارع، فهنا حققنا قيمة الإباحة وتجنب الوقوع في المعصية. فيما يخص الرأي الآخر في توصيف عقد الزواج، وهو علاقة مشاركة، وهذا ما ذهب إليه المالكية فيما أفهمه منهم، وذهب إليه شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية أيضا وآخرون. فيقرون أن العقد هو عقد مشاركة مبني على أن مثلا ينبني على هذا مثلا تطبيقات عديدة، منها مثلا أن المتعة هي حق مشترك بين الزوجين وليس حقا لطرف دون آخر. هذا فيما يخص مستوى العلاقة بين الزوجين. فيما يخص مستوى العلاقة على مستوى العائلة، فهذه الروابط التي ينشئها الزواج تحقق قيمة الرحم والقرابة. فالزواج طبعا كما هو معروف ينشئ مجموعة من العلاقات الاجتماعية التي تتأسس على أمرين أساسيين: النسل والمصاهرة. وهنا طبعا ينبني منظومة من الحقوق بناء على هذا النوع من العلاقات. هذه الثلاثية، الصيغة والعبادة والقيمة، تؤسس لمنظومة حقوق تتلخص في أمرين أساسيين: حقوق الله وحقوق العباد. فيما يخص حقوق الله تعالى، فهي تتمثل في عبادته في المسائل التعبدية التي أشرت إليها قبل قليل، وفي مسألة طاعة أوامره سبحانه، وصون النظام العام، ما يسمى الحق العام في القانون. لدى فقهاء الحنفية معنى آخر هي صون نظام العالم، يفسرون حقوق الله على أنها ما أريد بها حفظ النظام العام، ما أريد بها حفظ النظام العام. فصيانة النظام العام الذي تحققه الصيغة التي أشرت إليها قبل قليل هي تحقق جانبا من جوانب حقوق الله، من جوانب حقوق الله تعالى في هذه المسألة. النوع الآخر من الحقوق التي ينشئها عقد الزواج هو حقوق العباد. فهناك حقوق للزوج وحقوق خاصة بالزوجة كالنفقة مثلا، وهناك حقوق مشتركة بين الزوجين كما أشرت قبل قليل إلى المتعة مثلا، والحقوق الخاصة بالزوج مثلا طلاق في هذا التصور العام. وحقوق العباد يمكن أن تؤول أيضا إلى حقوق الله، بمعنى أن ما اعتبر أنه حق للعباد ففيه جانبان: أن الله أمر بتحقيقه وأنه حق للعبد. فمن الجهتين، فمن جهة أن الله أمر به فأنا أمتثل لهذا الأمر لأن الله أمر به فأصبح حقا لله، ومن جهة أنه حق للعبد فأنا أؤدي هذا الحق الذي للآخرين علي، فهو حق للعباد. فإذا بهذا المعنى نحن أمام تداخل وصعوبة الفصل بين هذه الأبعاد الثلاثة: الصيغة والعبادة والقيمة، فيما يخص عقد الزواج. باقي 5 دقائق. اوكي طيب، دقيقتين وانتهي ان شاء الله. بناء إذن على هذه الثلاثية التي أشرت إليها وهي أطروحتي الرئيسية هنا، الصيغة والعبادة والقيمة، يمكن لنا أن نقوم نقديا تطبيقات عدة تتصل بنظام العائلة، مثلا كالتوسع في استعمال التقنيات الحديثة اللي هي Assisted Reproductive Technologies. التوسع فيها يؤدي إلى الفصل بين الوسيلة وبين القيمة، وبالتالي يخل بالثلاثية التي أشرت إليها، الصيغة والقيمة والعبادة. مثلا الإنجاب من دون زواج، أو الإنجاب من دون علاقة جنسية أصلا، من دون عقد، أو اشتراك أطراف متعددة في الإنجاب. كل هذا أصبح متاحا وممكنا اليوم، ولكن الإشكال أنه يخل بالثلاثية التي أشرت إليها، وبالتالي يصبح غير شرعيا بهذا المعنى. أيضا من تطبيقات ذلك إثبات النسب لولد نتج عن علاقة غير شرعية، ما يسمى بولد الزنا في الفقه الإسلامي. فجمهور الفقهاء أنه لا يثبت النسب لهذا الولد لأنه لا يوجد عقد ولا يوجد زواج. فهنا غاب عنصر العبادة والصيغة على الأقل، لكي لا أدخل في البعد الثالث الآن والجدل حوله. ولكن بعض الفقهاء منهم إسحاق بن راهويه ومنهم ابن تيمية يرون إثبات النسب لهذا الولد، ولد الزنا، إذا ادعاه أبوه البيولوجي طبعا. ولكن هذا ينظر إليه على أنه مجرد استثناء من الحكم الأغلبي الذي من القاعدة الأغلبية التي أشرت إليها في بداية حديثي، وهو أنه لا عائلة من دون عقد، من دون زواج بعقد، ولا عائلة من دون زواج بين ذكر وأنثى. لأن هنا هذا إثبات النسب لهذا الولد يراعي حقوق المولود الذي ليس له ذنب في العلاقة، وأيضا لا يضفي شرعية على العلاقة، وإنما يحاول أن يعالج آثارها دون الحيف على النتيجة التي نتجت عن هذه العلاقة. فإذا هذا لا يخل بالقاعدة العامة ولا بالثلاثية التي أشرت إليها. أيضا من تطبيقات الثلاثية والتداخل الذي أشرت إليه بين القانوني والأخلاقي والديني فيما يخص عقد الزواج، التوسع في الممارسات المبنية على إنشاء بنوك الحليب وبنوك المني والبويضات، البايو بانكينج. وهنا لابد من التمييز في رأيي بين أمرين. الأمر الأول التوسع في إنشاء هذه المؤسسات، لا إشكال في التوسع في إنشاء هذه المؤسسات من حيث المبدأ، ولكن الإشكال إنما يقع في تطبيقات في وضع التشريعات التي تقنن عمل هذه المؤسسات. فهنا في التشريعات التي تقنن عمل هذه المؤسسات يجب أن يتحقق الثلاثية التي أشرت إليها، الصيغة والعبادة والقيمة، والحمد لله.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mutaz. Now we move to Dr. Dina Taha. She's Assistant Professor of Sociology and Anthropology at Doha Institute. So the floor is yours, Dr. Dina, and you have also 15 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. You can hear me. Okay. So I'm gonna be speaking, I'm gonna be speaking in English today. However, I am able to accommodate Q&A in Arabic as well. I know it's the end of the day. People are probably low energy, so I'm gonna try to keep this light. I am not a bioethicist by any means. In fact, 3 months ago, Dr. Ghaly and I had a chat, and this is when I first started learning about Islamic bioethics. I am here as a social scientist. As Dr. Ghaly introduced me, I'm a sociologist. So I'm here mostly to talk about how can empirical evidence and social sciences inform Islamic bioethics. Should they inform Islamic bioethics? And religious, or bioethics at large. It's not specifically Islamic bioethics, but the presentation today is going to focus on examples from the Muslim faith. How can social sciences help us reinterpret meanings such as nafa, or benefit, and darar, or harm, which are basic Islamic principles, but also identify unintended consequences of Islamic bioethical rulings or approaches. And finally, acknowledge how our social and personal biases can define what is ethical. But let me first back up, because I know the audience might be, most of the audience would know what I'm talking about, but just to make sure. So when I say social sciences, I am focusing, I'm talking about those sciences that focus on understanding human behavior, social structures, and cultural norms. So basically examining how people interact, how they make decisions, and how they shape their communities. Examples of these sciences are sociology, anthropology, political science, and psychology. And when I talk about empirical evidence, so in social sciences, empirical evidence happens when we collect real-life data to test our ideas and theories about how the society works. That can come through surveys, interviews, experiments, observations, and the aim is to turn opinions into generalizable conclusions or evidence. Okay, so this is how we advance. Yep. So when I was thinking about the presentation, I came up with 3 reasons why I think there should be like a stronger dialogue between empirical research and normative research, or like sociology and bioethics. And maybe the conversation can lead to more. But first, social sciences can help us anticipate and understand the social motivations and implications and the unintended consequences. And I'll give examples about what I mean here that may not be immediately apparent of certain bioethical issues and bioethical Islamic rulings. It can also enhance the bioethicist's self-reflexivity. And by that I mean helping them understand how their personal biases and their influence, how they influence their interpretations on ethical issues. Social discourses, and by that I mean the shared beliefs and values and norms that are produced from being part of the society, and those personal biases can inform how we might perceive what is ethical, what is harm, and what is benefit to the society. And so empirical evidence and social sciences are essential to challenge those biases and provide a clearer and more objective basis of ethical decision-making. And again, I'll be talking about a few examples. I'll talk at large about fertility and reproductive trends in the Muslim Arab world or the Muslim Middle East, and I'll focus specifically on female fertility preservation. The third reason is the other way around. We also, as social scientists, we want to trace and we want to understand the impact of bioethics and religion at large on social trends, and particularly on family and fertility trends. So by that I mean there is a gap in understanding among social scientists how Islamic bioethics shape fertility decisions in Islamic societies. We can assume, but there's no evidence, like there's no empirical evidence to prove that opinion. Okay, so let me give a few examples to explain what I mean about this relationship. So today, the Muslim world is still Orientalized. It's still conceived to be a place of high fertility, and that's typically attributed to men's patriarchal control over women's bodies and also the religiously fueled pronatalism. However, this portrayal of hyperfertility and male oppression is both outdated, and when I say outdated, I'm being very delicate with my description, and it also misses an important part of the story, and that's what I care about the most. Marsha Inhorn is a medical anthropologist at Yale University, and she spent the past 4 decades studying fertility in the Arab world, and she argued that there are 2 seemingly contrasting reproductive revolutions in the Muslim Middle East. The first one is the massive fertility trend. So contrary to the assumption, she thinks that that this was achieved in part through religious permissibility of contraceptive technologies, which is, again, this is an opinion, no empirical correlation between the two, in both Sunni and Shia sects, as well as by Muslim couples' own desire of smaller families. So in this table, I hope it's clear, it is. If you focus on, like this table traces the fertility trends in the Arab world or the Arab Middle East. And if you focus on row 3 or 6, I haven't figured out how to highlight slides yet. So yeah, count 3, so 1975 to 1980, the fertility rate among most, if not all, the Arab states was higher than the global average. So you'll see like everything, all the numbers are 4 plus, and the global average is 3.85. While if you move to the 6th or the last column, 2015 to 2020, it's pretty close. So there's a decline. Like most of the Arab countries are below the average or on target of the global average, with only 3 countries, Egypt, Jordan, and Yemen, who are over 3. And this table unfortunately misses Palestine as well, which is also around like 3.9. And 2 countries above 4.0, Iraq and Sudan. But it speaks to how there are consistent decline in fertility rates. So this is the first trend. The second revolution that Inhorn talks about is a massive infusion or popularity of assisted reproductive technologies in the Muslim Middle East. Again, so by mid-2000s, the Muslim Middle East hosted one of the largest and most successful IVF clinics and industries in the world. You can see here in this slide, out of 48 countries performing the most ARTs or assisted reproductive technology cycles per million inhabitants, 8 Arab countries could be counted, starting with Lebanon, Jordan, and all the way to United Arab Emirates. And again, Marsha Inhorn argues that this eager uptake of IVF across the Middle East has been due to enlarge the permissive attitudes of both Sunni and Shia Islamic religious authorities and bioethicists, who in general, like as we have seen from the previous 2 presentations, view pronatalism or ARTs as a biomedical tool to overcome human suffering. Okay, just a quick note on how fertility technologies affect family dynamics and gender dynamics in Muslim majority countries. And I'm here focusing on the Muslim Middle East or Muslim Arab countries or Muslim majority Arab countries. So overall, again, empirical evidence is pointing out that assisted reproductive technologies are transforming many Muslim societies, opening new possibilities for marriage, for gender roles, and for family structures. It's shifting women and men's attitudes and practices about family, about work, and about social life and engagement in social life. And by changing social attitudes, I mean, for example, desire for fewer children or preference for a nuclear family. And when I say nuclear family, I know right now the most acceptable form of family is the nuclear family, meaning like parents, husband, wife, and children, but it's not the only form. And by that I might be referring to polygamy, for example, or what Dr. Abdurrahman introduced us to. Also, as a sociologist, I can't miss this presentation without talking about like the other socioeconomic and political factors such as globalization, industrialization, urbanization, and neocolonization that are affecting those attitudes and those trends. So we can't blame it all on bioethics permissibility. One other important point is, since I started off by talking about Orientalism, it is important also to treat the Muslim world not as a homogeneous group, right? There are class divisions, there are differences between rural and urban areas, between Bedouin areas. So it is important like to take what I'm presenting as overall trends, and it's not always generalizable to all contexts. And just to conclude this point, I just want to summarize that assisted reproductive technologies, they had a mix of positive and negative impacts on both genders differently. So obviously it has led to female empowerment, not blaming the women mostly for fertility, which has been the case up until recently, renewing and increasing the commitment between spouses, holding marriages intact, with like the possibility of IVF, for example, but it also had negative effects mostly on women, specifically around the social, emotional, and physical toll on women. And again, the unintended consequences that I keep talking about, like for example, a lot of people are using IVF for gender selection with a preference for male fetuses, but also issues around disposal, regret, and mental health. Okay, so let me move on to talk about oocyte career preservation through vitrification, or female egg freezing for short, which is my preferred concept or name. And again, I want to distinguish quickly that I'm not talking about embryo freezing, so basically I'm assuming that there's no, like what I'm talking about today, I'm not talking about third-party donation, I'm not talking about fertilization has to be taking place within, by using the husband's sperm during marriage, not after divorce or husband's death. There's also conditions such as secure storage that prevents damage and mixing or loss of eggs. Female egg freezing remains a relatively new technology globally, starting in the early 2010s, specifically 2011, and it was introduced in Qatar in 2021. It initially was focused mostly on medical cases, such as preserving the fertility of cancer patients, which was welcomed by Islamic bioethicists, while also leaving the door hesitantly open for what is now called social egg freezing or elective egg freezing or non-medical egg freezing. And that's mostly carried on in Qatar here in private clinics. So medical egg freezing is happening in the public sector. Other forms of egg freezing or non-medical egg freezing is happening mostly in the private sector. And I just want to pause for a second on the naming itself. When we call, like that's why I hesitated to call it like social egg freezing or elective egg freezing, because all of these namings carry their own biases and their own pre-assumptions about why women are doing egg freezing or seeking fertility preservation through egg freezing. So I want you to take a second to think about what did you have in mind? What picture did you paint in your mind for this typically late 30-something or early 40-something woman who made that decision to freeze her eggs? Okay. Do you visualize it now? So bioethicist Heidi Murders, she argued that opinions for or against application of egg freezing are often based on different portrayals of women who might use it, and why they might use it. She listed 3 portrayals or images or explanations. I'll add a few more for the purpose of the discussion today. So who are the women who make these decisions? Are they selfish career women who delay motherhood for personal advancement? Or are they proactive, wise women making informed choices about their reproductive futures? Basically, feminists who don't need men in their lives. Are they victims of patriarchy and societal pressures that complicate the timing of motherhood while building your career? And I also don't want to miss the opportunity to blame capitalism that made the idea of the 9-to-5 job a normative idea about what work-life balance should look like. For example, in rural Egypt, that might not apply, and I can talk more about what I mean here in the discussion. On the flip side, are they pressured women who want to comply with societal expectations about motherhood? Or are they naive women who fell victims of the marketing of fertility preservation industries who really, really, really want their money and downplay the risks and exaggerate the success rate of fertility preservation, which, by the way, is not incredibly high? Are they moral women who are building the nation? For example, in Qatar here, there is a pro-natalist policy encouraging couples to procreate. So are they contributing to the nation building? Are they rich, privileged women, and often in literature that's referring to Caucasian or white women, who can afford it, which raises another ethical question about the ethical access to maternal health care and reproductive justice? That should also be a question for bioethics. Are they pious women who are trying to preserve one of the major objectives of Islamic creed, like Dr. Mutaz talked to us about hifz al-nasl or lineage? Are they traditional women who see motherhood as an important component of their identity? And finally, are they Orientalized women, oppressed brown women in a patriarchal society who are yet again saved and emancipated through reproductive autonomy offered to them by the Western civilization? And here I'm referencing Gayatri Spivak's famous quote, white men saving brown women from brown men. Okay. So what can we observe from these portrayals, though? Both critics, whether on the conservative side or the radical feminist side, are debating whether promoting egg freezing for achieving both career and motherhood truly empowers women, or if it places additional pressure on them, meaning if egg freezing may be perpetuating hegemonic motherhood mandate, whereby older single women are feeling unduly pressure to freeze their eggs in the hope that someday they can still become biological mothers. But again, this is not the conversation that me as a social scientist is interested in. This is an example of a theoretical debate that I was not able to find empirical evidence to support. These are mostly philosophical and ideological debates, which are important. However, here I want to highlight what is actually supported by evidence. Research is telling us that although religious women and secular women face many of the same dilemmas regarding marriageability, the inability to find a partner and founding a family is particularly distressing for religiously observant women who deem motherhood to be an important and central for their religious self-identities. Also, despite being portrayed as a proactive choice, the reality is most of those women who freeze their eggs, they use it as a last hope after approaching diminishing fertility and not part of a planned life strategy. Most of the people who were interviewed for fertility the median age for fertility preservation is 37. Also, I want to ask here, can it simply be that they cannot find a partner, appropriate or not appropriate, a partner? Finally, also empirical evidence tells us that many women do not have reproductive education even after making the decision. And I know Dr. Ghaly talked briefly about informed consent, but I want to distinguish here between consent and informed consent, meaning understanding the repercussions, the consequences, the success rate. Research shows that a lot of the women, even who choose to and start the process of fertility preservation, they do not have enough information to offer informed consent. Okay, this is my final slide because I know I'm, okay. So a way forward, as you can see, fertility preservation raises some questions. For instance, what are the social forces and inequalities that push women to freeze their eggs was a big piece of my presentation today. Also, will women who freeze their eggs actually use them, or will they remain unused, which raises the issue of disposal of both. I talked about egg freezing, but also embryo freezing opens the door for much more complicated issues. Could this practice become so normalized among women that it becomes a social expectation on every single woman? And that's the fear of radical feminists. Additional cultural challenges such as implications or never, so specifically to cultures where there's specific emphasis on virginity, where the implications on never been married women going through procedures that might compromise their hymen, especially with cultural stigma surrounding virginity. So even though in principle it might be permissible, from an Islamic bioethics point of view, there are cultural pressures where women refuse to go through it, or parents refuse to put their children through it. Is there a correlation between increased egg freezing and delayed marriage, divorce rates, changes in gender dynamics, and female empowerment? And is it a good reason to make this procedure ethical? Finally, are those links enough to make it ethical or unethical, to define it as lesser harm or nafa? And how does that correspond with the meaning of nafa and darar and the 5 objectives of Islamic legislature? So to address those questions, we've assembled a task force. Dr. Ghaly is part of it. Dr. Marsha Inhorn is also part of it, along with Dr. Ali Abdelhadi, who is Hamad Medical Corporation, which is the main public health provider here in Qatar, to address those questions through an interdisciplinary lens by collecting both empirical evidence and contrasting it and engaging it in a conversation with bioethics, but also with mental health, with health services, and so forth. This will be the first interdisciplinary qualitative study that focuses on female fertility preservation treatment in Qatar. And I know I'm adding a shameless plug here, but I'd like to hear more about what you think, about if you have similar projects, if you have any questions or suggestions. Thank you so much for listening. I hope I didn't take too much time. And yeah, looking forward to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dina. And thanks for the 3 speakers. I am supposed to give some wrapping up of the talks and stressing and highlighting the relevance to the bioethical discourse in particular. So I'll give some quick notes, hoping that I will not use that much time. With the introduction of assisted reproductive technologies in the 1970s, it became clear that humans could crack the system of reproduction. Throughout history, we know that we need a man and a woman in order to have a baby. To reproduce ourselves, we need the two. And we need an intimacy between the two, sexual relationships, so that the two can give children. But with the assisted reproductive technologies, the intimacy, the need for intimacy and the intimate relationship between a man and a woman was very much sidelined. And the stress was on the biological aspect. Not the relationship between man and woman, but what man contributes and what woman contributes. And we can, through a medicalization of the process, we can reproduce children without this need for intimacy. So we came to know all what we need from the man is the sperm, and all what we need from the woman is an egg and a uterus. That's what we need. And the fertilization of the egg through the sperm, we can do this manually. We can do this in a petri dish, not necessarily through intimacy inside the woman's body. At the surface, at first look, things look innocent. You are helping people to treat infertility. And the couple who cannot get children, which is a deep-seated instinct and desire in almost every human. Why not? We help the people and it looks great. But the issue is, of course, much deeper than this. Why do we use assisted reproductive technologies or IVF and fetal fertilization in particular? Not only because we want to have children, Because in moral tradition and religious traditions outside Islam, adoption, for instance, is a possibility. So Western Europe and the US, where this started, this whole ART started, you can adopt a child. Why do you need IVF? Because I don't only have a child that will carry my name, but I want to have a child who is part of me. A child that's mine, a child that carries my genetic characteristics, a child that has a mini version from me. So you needed someone who is biologically related, and science tells you, okay, we can arrange this. We can arrange this. So with this scientification and medicalization of the reproduction process, the man who would make a woman pregnant is in the first instance, I don't know if in the first instance here is the right word, but anyhow, will have a big role, sometimes a big role, in making a woman pregnant is the physician, not the husband. Because there is no sexual intimacy leading to pregnancy, but there is a visit to the IVF clinic that would make this woman pregnant. And by time, we will have the banks, and we bring a sperm from somewhere, an egg from somewhere. We can pay a woman to be a surrogate mother, and after delivery, we get the baby. So as a man, I can be a father from a child who is related to me, and I don't have anyone else. So the woman who would deliver the egg, I don't know her even. I've never seen her. I got the egg from a bank. The sperm is mine. There is no marriage. There is no relationship. There is no intimacy. It's just because I want to have a child. So the whole process was reduced extensively to having a child related to me. When people try to get children through the IVF, the question is that I want to have a child who is recognized by my moral and religious tradition that the child is mine. And the people around me in the society would give me the same recognition. Otherwise, there is no need for going all this time-consuming, exhaustive, expensive process and so on. That's why you find in the titles of IVF, especially in the beginning of the discussions, when, for instance, in the Jewish tradition and women want to have a child through IVF, they would say the Jewishness of the IVF-born children. When Marcia Inhorn, the famous anthropologist that Dr. Dina spoke about, she said, making Muslim babies. It's not just making babies. It's making babies that would be recognized by Muslims. So in the discussions that I spoke about in the previous session, interdisciplinary discussions, institutional discussions involving both physicians and religious scholars, I can summarize the shock that happened. Okay, now we have this. From an Islamic perspective, how far we go? There is a group, which is a minority, who blocked the door from the beginning. And they said these test tube babies, as it was called in the beginning, anabib in Arabic. They said, how come a child will be in a tube, boob and stuff? This is against the dignity of the child, etc. And couples who have difficulties to have children, they have to accept what God decided, and this is destiny, and that's it. But this was a small minority, and it was never supported by a bigger, by an institution or a group or whatever. We didn't have in Islam the position that we had in some Western countries, which is unconditional permissibility, more or less. A very permissive one saying everything is possible. As long as there is consent, we have a good contract. If we go to the court, we will win the case, then we can do it. We don't have religious scholars who say this. By the way, a reference was made to Ayatollah Khamenei, the Shi'i scholar, and that he permitted the sperm donation, egg donation, all these things. Yes, he did in different fatwas, but all the time for a married couple, not outside marriage again. So even the most permissive situation that happened, and that made many Muslim scholars, even Shia scholars, angry. I remember Dr. Sheikh Fadlallah said that Khamenei is a good politician, but he has nothing to do with fiqh. He does not understand what he's talking about. This was a Shia discussion. But anyhow, even within that, they said there must be marriage. It's not an open door policy that anyone can do anything. So again, what we have heard about the marriage institution or the marriage-based family institution is still there. Whether the scholars Shia, Sunni, Ibadi, whatever, there are limits. Within the main Sunni perspective, I would say even by consensus, the existence of a religiously valid marital contract is a condition by everyone. So a man alone cannot have children. A woman alone cannot have children. Both of them without having a marital contract, it's not possible. And I understand from colleagues here in Qatar, for instance, IVF clinics at Hamad Hospital and so on, they say the husband must be present when they do the implantation. And if the husband is not present, so it's not only a legal document showing that the husband signed, and so must be present and saying that it's fine. I remember during the COVID, there was a couple and the husband was outside the country. He could only speak on the phone and it was a problem because he had to be present and so on. So the issue even at the practical, empirical level is very clear. So this is one. The second one is what Dr. Helli referred to, al-ba'diyya, biological relatedness. This is also a condition. So the egg coming from the woman, the sperm coming from the man, the pregnancy is coming from the wife, nothing from outside. Even there was a case before, we don't have time to detail it, and then the institution retracted the fatwa. But anyhow, now what we know, the sperm from the husband, egg and uterus from the wife, nothing from outside. So al-ba'diyya is there. What was sacrificed and permitted is the intimacy. There is no sexual intercourse. And the whole thing will be done by a physician. They said it's fine, but we try to keep in consideration the issue of private parts, man-woman interaction, if the physician is male and the woman is female, some regulations in this regard. So the technology here is opening the door to almost a Pandora's box where almost everything's possible. You can have a child with 4 or 5 people saying that I'm the father and I'm the mother. The one who has the contract, the one who has the sperm, the woman who has the egg, the woman who has the mitochondria, another woman who has a contract. I remember once I was in the US and there was a lecture called collaborative reproduction. So you have groups trying together to get a child. In the Islamic tradition so far, we say at the normative level and the empirical level, there are limits all related to the marriage-based family institution. There is no family without marriage. There can be marriage without family. Okay, they don't have children, they just marry. But there is no family without marriage. And we keep so far doing this. The last point I want to say is that if you want to compare the conclusions, I'm a man, I want to have a baby and I have all the means and all the possibilities, etc. Why don't we give this person this right to do it? It's not a discussion about the rights. It's a discussion about the consistency of the moral world to which these people voluntarily chose to be part of. If you want to have a child, okay, the child will be yours biologically, but will not be recognized by your moral tradition because there is consistency and there are rules and so on. So the things I speak about, the centrality of the marriage, which will lead to the family, has been there and the IVF did not change it. But there are things that has been debated, the case that Dr. Dina Taha spoke about. I am a woman, I want to preserve the theoretical option that I will build up a family, but not now. If I wait, whatever the reason is, I may lose this option because of the biological clock. And you will lose the eggs and you cannot have children who are yours anymore. So they want to freeze the eggs and keep them. Okay, some religious scholars will say, okay, but now there is a slippery slope because these eggs can be used later outside marriage, they may be smuggled, etc. Okay, these are all discussions which can happen therein. And we can speak about religious reasons, cultural reasons, social reasons, political reasons, financial reasons, and so on. So, for instance, would it be okay for a woman to freeze the eggs because of the career? Or should we change the competition in the career so that this woman will not be under pressure to choose either a mother or a successful, a woman with a successful career? So the change shouldn't be technological, but it should be regulations on the work floor so that this woman would be able to combine both. Financial freezing eggs can be quite expensive. So this means that women who can do it, only the rich, but the poor cannot do it. So there will be social injustice and so on. All these discussions can happen. But again, there are limits and there are rules that cannot go outside that. I will stop here. So that we can have some time for a discussion. And we open the floor now for Q&A. So if any of you wants to raise a question, please let us know. Professor Gamal Surur, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the distinguished four speakers for all their input. I think this is great. Having been involved in this field for almost now 50 years, and involved in bioethics as well as in infertility and assisted reproduction technology, I must admit I am confused with this session. And forgive me for saying this because, there are medical practices and there are guidelines for practicing medicine. If, of course, you deviate from the ethically approved medical practice, then you can have all these sorts of violation of the issues. We all understand that the family is the basic unit in Islam between the husband and wife. And consequently, as Majma al-Fiqh al-Islami in Jeddah and Al-Azhar in the year 1980, and Majma al-Islami in Mecca, they indicated that if there is an indication for assisted reproductive technology between husband and wife, then it is permitted because it involved preservation of the family, and preservation of the family is one of the objectives of Islamic Sharia, provided that the egg is from the wife and the sperm is from the husband, and the embryo is transferred inside the uterus of the wife during validity of the marriage contract. And the validity of the marriage contract drops with either death or with divorce. So it is very clear. But when we think of other deviations, etc., this really is confusing a bit. This issue had been discussed in several meetings, and all the people came to this consensus. Again, when you talk about the freezing of oocytes, yes, it is true that if you freeze oocytes and if you use them improperly, then you will run into problems using them for outside the frame of marriage, etc., etc. But if you have the consideration, and the Dar al-Ifta in Egypt has issued this, that yes, you can preserve the oocyte for, well, of course, you preserve the oocyte either for medical indication or for social indication. Medical indication like oncology, yes, it is performed. Medical indication like before performing surgery, if a woman has cysts of her ovaries and you are going to remove this, then you are going to diminish her fertility, then you preserve the oocyte. And then for social reasons, I mean, if, say, a lady who did not get married and she is around the age of 38 or so, and she hasn't met the right man, what is wrong in that if she preserves her oocyte to be used by her, because we do know as physicians that her fertility markedly decreases with the advanced age, particularly after the age of 38. So what's wrong with that? Provided that, as Dar al-Ifta mentioned in Egypt, that these eggs will be used within a frame of marriage in future. So, you know, I'm saying this because here we have some of our young colleagues. I don't think, you know, we really should get them confused about the whole issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gamal Surur. We have been, I will give the floor to my colleagues if they want to comment, but we have been arguing all the time to say, how did we reach this conclusion in the Islamic tradition? This is what we're all trying to do, not to confuse. Yes, that there is a marriage-based family institution. When IVF came, it disrupted this. How did the religious scholars and physicians theorized it and came to this? This is what we are trying to explain to the audience who's here, not necessarily have the knowledge that you have or share the same values that we have. So there is no disagreement about the social freezing. Yes, there is no problem if you think about lineage only, nasab. There is no problem because egg will not create a baby, like sperm will never create a baby. But we ask, why is the woman doing this? This is another level of asking the question. So Google and Facebook and I think Microsoft, they offered insurance covering freezing eggs. Why? Because they found that women are not doing well because this is the age of making the career. When they compete with men, they get pregnant, etc., or either they remain without children. I ask myself, is this the solution? So you say to the woman, you have a successful career, or a woman? No, change the rules of the competition, I would say. Make it an option. And at the end, if I want to choose another option, it's fine. Then I have options. So here, I would say there is something wrong. So there are issues in the society. When people resort to this option, it should give an alarm, I would say. But anyhow, if any of the colleagues want to comment, Surah?
I can add one very quick, I don't know if this is working, yeah, it is. I guess one thing to add to what Dr. Ghaly said is that this is like an international event. So I was not assuming that the audience is only from within the Muslim community. It's also for people who are not Muslim, who are trying to get to know the logic and the rationale of how Islamic bioethics work, and hence the examples of the discussion.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I think there is a need here to differentiate between, I think I'm afraid that we are not on the same page. So there is a difference between evaluating a specific individual action for in a specific context for specific reasons, and on the other side, giving a general ruling and normalizing the action itself. So how do we evaluate the action? This is the point. So I understand the reason that you have raised, and in certain cases, when it comes to applied specific cases, I will support your position, of course, But the point here is that we are among a movement that is trying to transform the reproduction from an individual human emotional action to a technical action. This is the point here. How can we deal with this trend or this action? This is the point, in my view at least.
Thank you. طبعا دكتور جمال سرور هو طبعا طبيب متخصص في علاج العقم، فطبعا يحتاج الى وضوح في الامور. في اجراءات 1 2 3 منضبطه، خلاص بنشغل الكلينيك والدنيا بتمشي. فيعني عشان بس ما ندخلش في جدل فلسفي في مقاربات مختلفه. طيب اي سؤال اخر؟ Okay, we have here and then Zakia. Yes, please.
السلام عليكم. مداخلتي هي كالآتي: في الوقت الحالي من أكثر التحديات اللي نحن نعانيها كمجتمع مسلم ورغبتنا في التمسك في ديننا هي التغيرات العالمية اللي قاعدة تصير. فما نقدر نمشي عكس التيار وعكس التطور. الاحتياجات العالمية اللي صارت موجودة يعني شئنا أم أبينا توصل لنا في الأخير، لأن العالم الاقتصادي يعتمد على supply and demand، فهو كانت الحاجة أساسية أو الحاجة مفتعلة فصارت أساسية بالنسبة لنا. شو نقدر نسوي كمسلمين، كعلماء، كبايوثيست، نكون جاهزين لأي شيء يصير في المستقبل، بحيث أن الإنسان المسلم، راح أتكلم عن اليافعين اللي قاعدين يطلعون الحين على الدنيا، ما يحسون أن الدين الإسلامي يمنعهم من التمتع بحقوقهم الكاملة أو الحصول على أفضل ما يمكن يحصلونه في الزمن والعصر اللي هم عايشين فيه. شكراً.
شكرا للسؤال. أنا فقط عندي تعليق، يعني هل نحن مضطرون أن نكون تبع، أو السؤال الأهم ما الذي يمكن أن نقدمه للآخرين؟ يعني الآن قضايا البيئة أصبح الكل يحمل مسؤولية أن يقدم شيئا لحل عالمي يعني العالم كله. الأسرة قضية أهم، فبالتالي مسؤولية الباحثين في الأخلاق والدين أن ليس فقط أن يقدموا حلول لمجتمعاتهم، بل أن يقفوا أمام التدهور الذي يحصل في هذا المجال.
Next question, please. Back. No. Okay, yes, please. You can give and then please here again. Yes. Okay. Please go ahead.
The process of creating embryos outside of the normal reproductive process, but within marriage, has been the focus of the comments about the Islamic views. One additional issue is of interest to me, and I don't know if it was answered by your introduction, Dr. Ghaly, about the status of a fetus in normal pregnancy. And that is the question: what is the status of embryos that are created through artificial means using a couple's own egg and sperm because of an issue about normal conception? If all of those embryos are not used to create a born child, are not implanted with an attempt to have a pregnancy and delivery, this has become a major issue in other societies, and some of you may be familiar with what that resulted in a few months ago in the state of Alabama in the United States, where the Supreme Court of the state of Alabama said that all of those frozen embryos were persons and that they could not be disposed of or destroyed if during the couple's reproductive decisions they no longer wished to have further children. Is this an issue on which Islamic bioethics has a view which would then lead back, as it has led some people in the West, to think, well, maybe we should be very cautious about using this technology because it creates the dilemma of the frozen person.
Thank you so much. Okay. Yes, it has been an issue, and it has been extensively discussed. If we may say the majority position, the dominant majority position, is that the embryo or the embryo outside the uterus, what has been created through IVF, and the couples are not interested anymore in having children, what to do with them. They discussed one option related to letting it die, or terminating the life of the embryo, etc. This is one. One about donating, giving it to others, and the third, using it for research. The one adopted is using it for research after the consent of the parents, not commercialization, all these things, the normal ethical guidelines that we have also in the West, but with the consent of the children, and it will not be used for reproductive purposes outside the marriage of these couples. So we have stem cell research, and I remember well, I don't know which time, this was in the beginning of 2000 or the end of the 90s, when the Bush administration made severe restrictions about stem cell research. I was in Saudi Arabia, and I've seen different scientists from America who were doing their work. I think it was with King Faisal at this time for research, because it was there possible, but not possible in the US. So quite permissive when it comes to this regard. But this doesn't mean that you can do everything with the embryo. So for instance, there are restrictions that creating embryo exclusively for research. That's not permitted, because you are instrumentalizing a potential human being here. But in general, when you have surplus IVF embryos, can they be used for research? Yes, under specific conditions. But in principle, yes, because these are not persons, because they will become persons during pregnancy after 120 days when the soul is breathed. So this is all unimaginable outside the uterus when they are like 10 or 15 years, 10 or 15 days old, etc. Yeah? Does this make sense? Okay. Dr. Bar. And then I'll come you back to Zakia. Sorry. Yes, just Dr. Bar. If you can give the mic here to the first front.
Thank you very much. This subject was discussed in Majma' Fiqh Islami in Makkah al-Mukarramah several times. And it is well evident for Muslims that no procreation should occur except in marriage, in the concept of a man married to a woman. If it is outside this marriage, it is not considered a proper way of accepted lineage. It's not. And we had that, but before Islam. Before Islam, Abu Sufyan went to Taif and had sex with a girl there, and illegally. They were not married at all. But the son was very brilliant later on, and they kept him, and he was called Ibn Abi. Ziyad Ibn Abi. He was one of the brilliant people at the time. And then Muawiyah made him his brother. This is a long history where he was recognized by his brother later on, because he was a brilliant man. But officially, from the point of view of Islam, all the Muslim leaders refused him. He's not. They didn't kill him. He has no crime from himself, and he could work, but he's called Ziyad ibn Abi, the son of his father. Who is his father? Nobody knows. That's one of the solutions that they had it just at the beginning of Islam. At the beginning of Islam. Now, with the Majma' Fiqh Islami, they say, as you have suggested, or somebody has suggested, that they take a lot of ova, of course, by stimulation, and then fertilize them, like in vitro fertilization, they were taking up to 50 ova, up to 50. But that was wrong, of course, but that was at the beginning of the subject. And some will fertilize them and then find which one is the best or which group is the best, and they put them back. And they had multiple pregnancies. Usually they had, in Jeddah, we had 5. In America, they had 5 or 6. In Iraq, they had 6. And some places more than that. Which were successful pregnancies. But that was very dangerous also. And then they came to the rules with the IVF people, don't replace except 1 fertilizer, or maximum 2. Fertilizer should not be replaced into the uterus of the lady, except if she's in need, of course, for that. They came because they are sterile, or they had a problem for having pregnancy. So the maximum that was agreed on, 1 or 2, because they had a lot of the problem of multiple pregnancies there. It's not. They'll be sometimes all of them die. The mother will suffer. The family will suffer. Even the community will suffer. You cannot replace 20 or 30 or 40. The solution of the Majma' Fiqh Islami was wonderful. It said replace 1 or 2, and the fertilized ova could be used for stem cell research. That's a very good. I was amazed, actually, when they agreed to this. I was with them there. We had a long discussion with it. And they have agreed. You can make use of these in stem cell research. We need it. They will not be thrown away. They can be, or they can be used for a second pregnancy for the lady later on. You can keep them in the deep fridge for 10 years. They're still viable. So there are a lot of solutions there. This is not just completely closed. I think the solution of the Majma' Fiqh is brilliant. These are fuqaha. But when they understood the situation, the discussion, I was the only doctor with them. They were very brilliant, actually. They were very brilliant to understand difficult questions and giving us solutions that were not arrived in America, but we have surpassed the Americans in this issue. That was wonderful fuqaha. Majma' Fiqh Islam, we should clap for them. It's a wonderful thing for Majma'. People who hadn't had an idea about medicine. They didn't study medicine. They didn't know all these things. But they were very brilliant. They were caring very much. And we can have a solution for this. Not completely closed. We can have it for a second pregnancy. Next pregnancy when they have 1 or 2 maximum. Because more than 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 is a heavy burden for the lady. Most of the time she will abort. It will be a lot of diseases, a lot of problems for the family. Who can care for 5 at one time? Who will breastfeed them? It's unimaginable. It's very difficult. They had actually 5 and they succeeded. But that was only in some cases, very rare cases, that happened the first time. It happened in Mustashfa al-Haras al-Watani, National Guard Hospital in Jeddah. I knew that about it, and many people went to visit them and help them, help the family. This is wonderful, actually. But we have to keep to the rules of Islam. This is the most important issue here, not to bring, they made a rule, not to try to bring up a lot of ova. If you get a lot of ova, that is dangerous to the lady, because we give her a lot of stimulants to the ovary, and then produce a lot of them. And she can have a lot of diseases from that issue itself. Yeah, as a gynecologist, you will know that, of course. Every gynecologist knows that. It is a very serious thing. Overstimulation of the ovaries can kill the lady. Can kill the lady. That's a very serious thing. Every gynecologist should know that.
I think the point is clear, Dr. Mohammed.
I think just I finish this.
Okay. Yes.
This is a point that needs to be very careful. Fertilizer required ova, mostly for these cases, will need 1 or 2 babies. And then if there are excesses, either you can excess ova came, fertilized ova, or non-fertilized ova, or fertilized ova. Non-fertilized ova should be kept for the later pregnancy, if they want it, if they still want it, or the fertilized ova could be used also for next pregnancy, or for stem cell research. The people agreed to use these for stem cell research. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed Ali Al-Bar. I'm terribly sorry for the colleagues who still have questions. I have the directors here in front of me, the translators. We have to finish, so I'm really, really sorry. If there are any questions, my colleagues are here, I'm here, we can still discuss, no problem. But I have to conclude the session so that we remain punctual, which is also a value in itself. So very happy to see many questions going around. We'll be happy to discuss this further. But thank you very much. I thank Dr. Dina, Dr. Mutaz, Dr. Abdurrahman, and I thank the audience, the translators, the technician team who were with us today. Everyone was fantastic. Thank you so much. Have a good day and see you in other sessions, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.